Alright, good day, BSTM HRO class, and welcome to your first lesson on our subject, Tourism Policy Planning and Development. So, for our first lesson, this will be the first part of a two-part series. This is your introduction to tourism planning. Our objective is that at the end of the lesson, the students are expected to express a definition of planning and other related terms and references, explain why planning is an integral part of tourism development, identify what are the levels of tourism, distinguish the different levels of tourism, and lastly, identify the components of tourism development. Okay, so let's begin with the general concept of planning. Okay, so you have there your module with you. You can alongside listen to me, and at the same time pwede nyo basahin yung module para sa mas mayaman na pag-aaral. Okay, so what's the general concept of planning? So basically, the definition of planning is organizing future events in order to achieve the set objectives. So meron kang objectives, may mga gusto kang mangyari, and what you do is you conduct planning. Major types of planning may include economic development planning, physical land using planning, infrastructure, social facility planning, park and conservation planning, corporate planning, urban and regional planning. Other references is ano naman yung objectives or objective. Objective is what is to be expected to be achieved in planning for tourism development. Okay. Policy, on the other hand, is the approach applied to guide and determine decision making. This is expressed in terms of a set statements and relates directly to the development of our set objectives. Plan. Okay? Planning kanina. Plan. Plano. Anong plano? Yan. Plan o plano refers to an orderly arrangement. Take note of the keywords. Orderly arrangement of parts of an overall system that reflects the policy. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, ang mga policy hindi nag-exist nang wala sa plano. Kaya may mga batas, may mga guidelines. It's because ito'y pinagplanuhan, pinag-isipan, hindi lang dahil trip lang. Okay? So, that's why policies are there, laws are there in our society in order to ensure order. Hindi para pahirapan tayo. Okay? Plans or staging of plans may consist of maps, graphic representations, explanatory text, okay, including statements on recommendations. Next, another term we have is strategy. Okay, since we're talking about planning, development, so ano yung strategy? What is the strategy? Okay, it refers to the means of accomplishing the policy and plan recommendations or the development of an action. Okay, so to the means, ibig sabihin, ito yung paraan na ginagawa para daw makamit yung mga nasa plano, no? O yung mga nais gawin para sa plano. Okay? And then conservation, okay, the last one refers to the planned management, specific sites and places, natural and cultural resources in general. Okay, take note ha. Ang conservation ay hindi po kapareho ng term na preservation. In tourism, magkaiba po yan. There is conservatory or conservation tourism, and there is preservative or preservation tourism. Ang preservation is how do you say this? Hindi nababago o walang balak baguhin ng isang bagay dahil likas na dapat na ganun siya. Natural resources, wildlife, virgin forests are all examples of that we need to preserve. Okay, like other archaeological monuments, yan, pinipreserve yan. And then sometimes they undergo restoration para manatili silang intact. Ang conservation kasi, flood management, developmental siya. Okay? Hindi siya preservative o i-preserve. So, magkaiba po silang dalawa. Okay, what are the goals for development? Okay, first we have the enhanced visitor satisfaction. Okay, followed by better business and improved economy, sustainable resource use, community integration. So these are the goals that we have set. Bakit kinakailangan merong tourism planning? That's the reason why we are undergoing this subject. Now, what is tourism planning anyway? Okay, so we have here the definition. Okay, read it through. It is the process of considering the needs of people in planning a trip and using those factors to determine, okay, the best resources, programs, and activities for their trip. The keywords to remember, okay, tourism planning, number one, is a process. Proseso. Alam na natin yan. Proseso ng ano? Where you consider the needs. Needs, keyword. Okay, pangangailangan. Needs para saan? For a trip. Since we're talking about tourism, what are the things that we need to consider as needs in going for a trip or staging a trip? And how these factors, okay, these needs that we determine help ensure that the trip becomes enjoyable and successful. Yan ang tourism planning. So, it is intended for local residents and businesses of that location. Okay, as well as the tourists who travel there. So, it's a mutual, okay, relationship program between the people living in the tour area and the tourists who visit the area. The essence of tourism planning involves the coordination with other government agencies to improve tourism-related infrastructure. The planning also extends to the participation of the private sector, okay, by providing plenty of resources and information to travelers. So in other words, in tourism planning, every factor, sabi nga natin, is considered. Lahat tinitingnan kasi hindi ka pwede magkaroon ng oversight o pagkalingat dun sa ginagawa mo, sa pagpaplano mo sa isang magandang turismo, or else hindi siya ma-appreciate ng mga tao, no? And when we're talking about tourism planning, there are 4, okay, levels of tourism planning. That includes the international level, okay, the national level, then we have the regional level, and the sub-regional level. The things that distinguishes all these levels are clearly described on the module, so please read it out and understand. If you have any questions or clarifications, always feel free to comment sa ating group page so that I can reply from there and explain for everybody to hear. Huwag mahiya po magtanong o humiling ng pagpapalinaw kung merong kinakailangan linawin. Okay? Moving on, what are the important elements of tourism planning approach? Okay? So since we're talking about its continuity, what are these elements that we need to identify? So we have here, it's a system approach, comprehensive approach, integrative approach, community approach, implementable approach, and application of system planning process. Okay? And the last part would be the components of tourism development. So, every tourism development has its components. Kanina nasa planning na tayo. So kapag nabuo na yung plano, all you have to do is develop it. Kasi andun na yung plano, nagawa na yung process, nag-undergo na doon. So ito na yung turismo, okay, ito na yung lugar, kaganapan, mga tao. So how do you ensure that it is continuously being developed? Okay? The first component we talk about is tourism attraction and facilities. This could be the all-natural, cultural, special features of an area which attracts people, okay, tourists to visit the area. Ano ba yung lugar na dinadayo? Ano ba dun sa lugar na iyon ang dinadayo o pinupuntahan ng mga tao? What makes it attractive? So we call that's the first element. Okay? The tourist attraction or the facilities. No? The second is the accommodation. Accommodation as a component has the elements of hotels, other types of facilities. So ano yung magkikater sa mga tao kapag nandun na sila? May matitirhan ba? May mapupuntahan ba? May mapapahingaan ba? No? What if it's a week-long travel or tour? So, importanteng merong accommodation. That's the second most important component. Then we have other tourist facilities and services. Sorry ka. So, a picture na binanat ko dyan. Base lang sa personal na karanasan yan. Okay? Of course, when you go on tour, you need to eat. Di ba? Kakain ka eh. So, ang mga magbibigay sa iyo niyan ay yung mga taong taga doon. Sila yung makikinabang sa turismo na present sa lugar na yun. So these people will prepare, outlets for eating, kahit simpleng karinderya lang yan o pika-pika. That's an important component. Kakain, laging mag-stop over yan, kakain. And of course, huwag mo kalimutan na pasalubong. Di ba? Hindi nawawala yan sa bawat lakwatsa natin. Yung dadayo ka para sa mga pasalubong. Bigay ka ng, alaala na nanggaling ka sa lugar na yun. Alright, and then the next component is transportation facilities and services. Okay, that's number one. Also, very important. Because when you're already in a place, let's say punta ka na Batanes, hindi mo ma-enjoy ang Batanes kung maglalakad ka lang. Mauubos ang araw mo kalalakad. So you need, transportation means, no? Nalala niyo yung pelikula ni Coco Martin, tsaka ni Tony Gonzaga, sa Batanes yung nila, di ba? Meron lang sila kulong-kulong, tricycle lang nun, no? Pero ito, tingnan nyo. Sa China, merong rickshaw. So, may at least bisikleta na, di kinakalad ka. You go to Italy, visit Venice, merong lancha, something like that. Okay, so we will continue of the components on the second part of this discussion. Stay tuned, huwag kayong alis, dyan lang kayo. Okay, break lang tayo saglit.